In this lecture, I will be talking about structure and composition of atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, and biosphere. So, as all of us know that planet Earth is our home. So, this planet Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, and so far, this is the only planet which is known to support life. Now, this planet has well-defined continents and ocean bases. So, the amount of water present and the landmass is quite defined. Now, this Earth is very dynamic, both internally as well as externally. So it means the surface of the Earth keeps on changing, and it's not only the surface, the inside of the Earth also keeps on changing. This Earth is considered as a closed system as well. So look at this particular image here. So here you see an example that how or why this particular system, Earth is considered as a closed system. So here what we see is that solar energy is coming as an input from outside, as sun is the energy provider to the Earth, and here some of the energy is lost to the outside world, which is known as the terrestrial energy output. Now, this particular energy is lost into the universe. So this outgoing energy or the incoming energy, they are kind of equivalent. So the mass of this Earth remains conserved. So the total mass of the Earth is kind of remains constant. So there's no addition and there's no loss. So that's the reason that we call it as a closed system, as the amount of energy entering the system and the amount of energy leaving the system, there is a negligible difference. And also in terms of mass, there is hardly any difference. So this closed system consists of 4 different spheres. So they are kind of interlinked. So number 1 is the geosphere, that is the surface of the Earth or the landmass that we call as. Second one is the hydrosphere. So it is the water content of the Earth. The third one is the atmosphere, or you can say the air content of the Earth. Now, all these 3 components, they come together and they constitute towards the 4th component, which is the biosphere. So here from this particular image, one can speculate that the shortwave radiations, they are coming from the sun. They are being received by the earth, absorbed by the different organisms, such as plants, which absorb and undergo the process of photosynthesis. While undergoing the process of photosynthesis, this light energy is converted into chemical energy. Food is being synthesized and hence begins the process of different kind of food chains. Now there is a small amount of energy which is also radiated back in the form of long wave radiations. So the amount of energy received and the amount of energy radiated remains the same. So now there are a couple of reasons that why Earth sustain life. So there are some of the prominent reasons that I will be talking about. So Earth is not too close or far from the sun. So because of that, it prevents it from freezing or frying. So those planets which are very close to the sun, they have very high temperatures. So because of that, the life cannot sustain. The water cannot be there. The different kind of plants or organisms, they would have not developed. And also, if the distance is too far, so that would result in very low temperatures. So that would again not be an ideal temperature for survival of different life forms. Earth has large enough to hold atmosphere. So the size of the Earth is optimum, which can hold the atmosphere around it. So the third point is the abundance of water. So far, this is the only planet where water is available. Now, this water acts as a source which provides as a raw material for the synthesis of energy rich compounds, or you can say this is the lifeline of different kind of organisms. Fourth point is the temperature ranges to allow water to exist in different forms. So at different places on the earth, the temperatures are different. So that facilitate water to exist in three different forms, which are gas, liquid, as well as solid. So the interaction of the four component or spheres of the Earth system is there. So all the four systems, geosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere, and the biosphere, they are continuously interacting. And also there are a couple of theories which have been proposed for the origin of life that existed, that is currently existing in its modern form. So that point can be discussed at some point later. So we'll talk about the geosphere first. So geosphere, it is the solid inorganic part of the earth. So it also includes Earth's surface and the layers of its interior. So if you look at this particular image here, so onto the surface of the earth, you will see that there is different water bodies, and also there are landforms. Now below the surface, what we see is the solid inorganic layer. So the earth is composed of nested shells that are classified according to their chemical and mechanical characteristics. So this is a kind of classification given to the earth on the basis of their composition and mechanical characteristics. So let's see the classification on the basis of composition. So the outermost layer is called the crust. So this is primarily composed of silica and light metallic elements. So below the crust is the mantle, and this mantle is primarily consists of silica and iron and magnesium also. The innermost layer is the core. So this core is composed of iron and nickel. Now, if you look at the mechanical aspect, the mechanical characteristics, then we have different divisions. So the topmost is the lithosphere. So this lithosphere is the brittle solid surface. Now this solid surface where most of the life forms survive. So below this lithosphere is the asthenosphere. So this is usually a solid but nearly liquid. So it is the area where the abundance of water could be there. Then the third layer is the mesosphere. So this mesosphere is the solid layer. Below this mesosphere, what we see is the outer core. Now this outer core is a liquid one, and below this is the inner core. Now this inner core is again the solid one. So now you can notice from here that there are kind of different variations of the mechanical properties. Outside it's solid, then liquid, and then solid. So this is how we can differentiate between the different layers. So the outer crust, which is we call as the crust, this is about 5 to 40 kilometers. So we also have this lithosphere surface, which is a little bit more than this 40 kilometers. This is about from top to inside 100 kilometers. If we look at this, then we have this below this lithosphere is the mantle, or below the crust is the mantle, which is about 2900 kilometers. Then we have the outer core and the inner core. So the outer core is 2250 kilometers and the inner core is 1200 kilometers. So there are some important roles of the geosphere. So it is the contributor of particulate matter to the atmosphere. So different kind of particulate matters which are present in the atmosphere, they are provided by the geosphere itself. So it is the contributor of salt to the oceans. So different water bodies which are having the saline architecture or the large abundance of salts is because of this geosphere into those water bodies. This is also the ultimate source of nutrient for all living beings. So all the living things, they thrive onto this particular sphere, onto this zoosphere, which provide the nutrient content to all the living organisms. This is also an important contributor of atmospheric gases. So these atmospheric gases, they could be coming from different volcanoes as well. Also, the movement of plate produce barriers that aid in the isolation of population of organisms. So it is believed that the movement of different plates could have led to the formation of different islands, and also it could have influenced the process of evolution of different kind of species and how the species could have originated. So now let's have a look a little bit detail about the geosphere. So as I told that in geosphere, the outermost layer is the crust. So that crust, it could consist of the two surfaces, that is the water body or the ocean part and the land part. So that particular crust we call as the oceanic crust, and this is we call as the continental crust. So this crust is the thinnest layer of the earth. So the topmost part or the surface part that usually we observe onto the earth's surface is the crust, which is the thinnest layer. So this particular layer is made up of large amount of silicon and aluminum. It is this plate. So it is onto this particular plates, the crust, the different continents and the oceans rest. So these ride over molten mantle. The mantle part, which is just below the crust, is in the melting state, onto which different kind of crust are moving. So this crust is the part of the lithosphere. So there are two types of crust, as I told, oceanic and the continental one. So if we differentiate between the continental and the oceanic one, so there are different kind of characteristics onto which we can differentiate. So let's see, if we look at the rock type, then in the continental one, we see that granite rock types, they are the majorly present, whereas on the oceanic one, it is the basalt. So if we look at the thickness, the continental crust is about 5 to 70 kilometers thick, while the oceanic one is 3 to 8 kilometers. It is quite thinner, as this particular crust is dominated majorly by the water body. So if we look at the state, then the both continental as well as the oceanic crust, they are in the solid state. And if we talk about the age perspective of the crust, then the continental is about 4 billion years old. And if you talk about oceanic, it is about 180 million years old. So this particular crust, this oceanic crust, is much younger as compared to the continental crust. And if you look at the density part, then continental one is less dense. The oceanic one is the more dense part. The elemental composition, if you look at it, then the continental crust has oxygen, sodium, silicon, aluminum, and potassium, while the oceanic one just have iron, magnesium, and calcium. So we talk about the lithosphere. The crust and the upper layer of the mantle, they together make up a zone of solid brittle rock, which is called as the lithosphere. So lithosphere is divided into separate plates, so which move very slowly in response to the different convecting part of the mantle. So in this particular image, you can see that this is what we have the mantle part, and there we can see different convecting parts. Now, depending on the currents which are there in the convecting part, the islands which are present on the Earth's surface, they can move apart or they can come together. So if you look at here, the direction of the convecting current dictates that if they are in the similar opposite directions, then obviously the islands will be, sorry, if they are kind of coming they are in opposite directions, so they'll bring the closer. And if they are moving on the opposite apart directions, so they'll move the islands further. So depending on what the direction is, either they'll come closer or they'll move further. So the crust of Earth is broken into many pieces called the plates. So the plates, they float on the soft semi-rigid asthenosphere. The mantle is the largest layer of the Earth, which is about 2,900 kilometers thick. The mantle, it is composed of very hot, dense rock that flows like asphalt under a heavy weight. So the movement of the middle mantle or the asthenosphere is the reason that the crustal plates of the Earth moves. So usually we sometimes observe that there's some kind of earthquake. So that earthquake is because of the movement of this asthenosphere part. So there are different movements or different currents which take place that leads to the movement of the plates on the top, and we experience earthquakes. The asthenosphere is the semi-rigid part of the middle mantle and flows like hot asphalt under heavy weight. So the asthenosphere, or in Greek, it means that weak sphere. So this asthenosphere is a soft layer of the mantle on which pieces of lithosphere move. It is made up of solid rock. So usually it is flowing at the same rate as our fingernails grow. So there's a continuous movement of this particular layer. The middle mantle flows because of the convection current. So yeah, look into this particular image here. So here the convection currents, they are present to the mantle. So these are caused by very hot material, so which is present at the deep. So this particular convection currents, they keep on repeating cycle over and over again. So the mantle, it is the solid but capable of flow. So it is usually like semi-solid or semi-liquid form. So this is the thickest layer of the Earth, which is about 2,900 kilometers. So the elemental composition of mantle is magnesium, silicon, oxygen, and iron. So the hot magma rises and then cools and sinks. So usually whenever there is a volcanic eruption, so if it could manage to find a crack onto the surface of the lithosphere, this layer which is present inside the mantle, it moves out in the form of volcanic eruption. So this hot magma moves out. But when it couldn't find, there's a continuous cycle of cool and sink. So these convection currents cause change in the Earth's surface. So this cooling and heating of the magma kind of creates convection currents in the Earth's surface. So that kind of movement of the magma is acting as a conveyor belt for the tectonic plates. So core. So the outer core composition is molten liquid metal, which is about 4,700 degrees centigrade. So this is quite a high temperature, and the thickness is about 2,266 kilometers. The state of the matter, it is composed of mainly metal, nickel, and iron, and they are in the liquid form. And this is core, this outer core part is liquid. It is located below 1,800 miles below the crust. The inner core, it is the solid sphere made mostly of iron and nickel. So here the temperature is even much higher. In the outer core, it was 4,700 degrees centigrade. Here it's 6,650 degrees centigrade. So the heat in the core generated by the radioactive decay of the uranium and other elements. So it is, this part is solid, this inner core part is solid because of the pressure from the outer core mantle and the crust which is compressing it. So the thickness is about 1,271 kilometers. Okay, so now we'll move to the second component, which is hydrosphere. So this hydrosphere is composed of all of the water in the Earth system. So this includes water in the oceans, rivers, lakes, air, and below Earth surface. So on the Earth, the 97% of water is present in the ocean, and the remaining 3% water is the only fresh water. So this is also majorly in the form of ice sheets, and also in the form of a little bit is in the water vapor form, and some of it is in the form of groundwater. So the presence of liquid surface water makes our planet unique. So it is this abundance of hydrosphere or the availability of water kind of makes it very convenient for the sustenance of life. So some of the important aspects of hydrosphere are, so because of this hydrosphere, we have moderate climates. So in order for the water to sustain, the moderate climates are being created. And this hydrosphere is responsible for the transfer of heat. So it's not only that the water, let's say, when there is rain, it kind of cools down. And whenever there's no rains or very dry, then it may be really hot. So, or also this act as a transfer of medium for transfer of heat as well. So all the organisms, they need water to transport nutrients and the waste products. So it's the not only the plants, it's the animals also, for the movement of different ions or metabolites. The water is the primary solvent which allows the movement of molecules. And also the waste which are generated, they are also moved via water. So earth is also important, many earth. So water is also important not only to the life, to the earth as well. So it allows in the formation of minerals, in the weathering and erosion of the rocks. So let's have a look, a deeper look into this hydrosphere. So we only have 1.7% of water that we can actually use. So if we look at this particular part here, so the earth water is 97% is saline and 3% is fresh. And in this fresh water, what we see is that 68.7% of water is present into ice caps and glaciers. 30.1% is in the form of groundwater, and others is 0.5. So some water vapor or something. And in this surface water is only 0.3%. Now this 0.3% water that is available to us, there is fresh surface water, and which is about 87% in the lakes, 2% in the rivers, and there's 11% in the swamps. So water, it is the only substance on the earth which is found in all the three forms. So these forms are, it is solid in the form of ice, liquid in the form of surface water, and gas in the form of water vapor. So some of the salt water locations are in the oceans. So oceans, they are the large water bodies on the earth. They contain a lot of water. However, this particular water is non-potable. It is not suitable for drinking. The potable or the water suitable for drinking is only found in the fresh water sources. So this potable water, it is kind of considered as which fits into the drinking standards. So the clean water, it is good enough for washing, cooking, and it may not be necessary for the drinking. The third one is the contaminated water. So the water which is having different kind of waste products. So it is considered as the toxic water. So another fresh water source is the ice. So fresh water is the water which doesn't have salts in it. So on the earth's surface, ice is the most abundant source of fresh water. Now this ice water is present at different locations, different forms. So one is the icebergs. So it is usually a large piece of fresh water floating in open waters. Second one is the glaciers. So it is large mass of ice that moves slowly over land. And third one is the permanent snow areas. So these are the areas which are covered by snow all around the year. So these are commonly found around the poles where the temperatures are not that high. So the freshwater locations, which is usually the surface water. So the surface water is located onto the surface of the land. The good examples could be river, lakes, and the streams. So river basin, it is the term used to describe an area that drains into a large river. So river basin, it's usually made up of watersheds. So what is a watershed? That it is the term used to describe an area that drains into a small river or stream. So let's imagine that if it rains, then the water could be going all around the area. However, there could be some area which is at the high. So the water flows from the high to the lowland areas. Now, those places from where the water could move to the low areas and collect into small streams and ultimately join a bigger river. So that particular area from where the water could be collected is called as the watershed. So these large river basins, they are made up of many interconnected watersheds. So it is possible that the large rivers, they are flowing at longer areas. So it is possible that different watersheds could be there, which is providing water to those rivers. The water in a watershed runs to the lowest point. One can say that the rivers are at the lowest point in those watershed areas. So this ultimately, if you look at the watershed, it starts as the small stream and ends up into big river, and then ultimately it could either end up into a lake or could end up into a ocean. So a river is a large channel along which water is continually flowing down a slope. So this particular river is made up of many streams that come together. So this is a picture of a Yukon River. So here you can see this is a huge river where these different kind of streams are joining. So these different streams, they join the river at different places. So depending on where the low-lying areas are, they can be joining. So stream is a small channel along which water is continually flowing down a slope made up of small gullies. So let's have a look at this particular image here. So this is a stream, which is a picture of a stream from Turkey. So here, this is a very small gully-like area where the water is flowing. Now, this stream could end up or join a river. Now, another water body is the lake. So it's a body of water of considerable size contained on a body of land. So the rivers, they could either end up in a lake or they could end up in a bigger oceans.